Let's talk about workplace safety. It's one of those things that, we often push to the back of our minds, right up until the moment it's too late. Today, we're going to look at a scenario that really shows just how thin that line is between a totally normal day and an absolute disaster. So let's just start with a really direct question, one that every business owner, every manager really ought to be asking themselves. And look, this isn't about being paranoid. It's about being realistic and prepared for a situation that can change in a heartbeat. You might think that sounds a little dramatic, but it's really not. We're about to walk through a story from our source material. It's a fictional account, yeah, but it's based on very real-world events. And it shows exactly how a regular workday can spiral into a full-blown crisis. Okay, so our story kicks off on what seems like a completely normal morning at a medical billing company. But honestly, the lessons we're about to learn here, they could apply to any office, anywhere. The scene is just so ordinary. A receptionist, we'll call her Jen, is just getting her day started, making a cup of coffee. I mean, we can all picture that, right? And that's exactly what makes what happens in the next few minutes so incredibly jarring. And here we go. This is where things go from 0 to 100 with terrifying speed. We are not talking about a slow burn here. It took just 5 minutes, to go from totally normal to a life or death situation. Just look at this timeline. At the 0-second mark, a guy just bursts in. 30 seconds later, he's already physically assaulting the receptionist. A minute in, the manager gets involved and a violent brawl breaks out. Then, at 3 minutes, it becomes a major data breach. He grabs a laptop and runs. And then, at the 5-minute mark, the absolute worst-case scenario. He's back and he has a gun. Now here's where an incredible stroke of luck saved the day. The office just happened to be near the police station, so when the call went out, you could hear sirens almost immediately. They got there just in the nick of time and were able to apprehend Scott, stopping what could have been an unbelievable tragedy. But here's the thing you gotta understand. Even with him under arrest, the crisis was far from over. The incident itself? That was just the beginning of a long, complicated, and painful fallout for the company, for the manager, Ed, and for Jen, the receptionist. The damage just kept stacking up. I mean, you've got the physical injuries, of course, and the psychological trauma, which is huge, but then there was that major security breach. That stolen laptop had sensitive patient data on it, which immediately triggered police investigations and even brought in the Office for Civil Rights, the OCR, which deals with patient privacy violations. It was a complete cascade of liability, one problem piling on top of another. So let's just step back for a second. This whole thing, it wasn't just some random, unlucky event. According to our source, this entire nightmare was preventable. It was caused by some really critical failures that left the company completely wide open and vulnerable. And right here, this is the key. This whole story is a warning. It's a purpose-built illustration of what happens when you neglect to prepare. It's designed to show us that domino effect, how one single incident can set off a chain reaction when the right systems just aren't in place. The source really wants us to think about this. What could Jen or Ed have done differently if they'd been trained in de-escalation? How could a better security protocol have stopped Scott from even getting in the building, or at least from walking out with that laptop? And this chart just lays it out perfectly. There are 2 different paths. On one side, you have the reactive approach we saw in the story. Total chaos, injury, a security breach, and just this spiraling crisis. But on the other side, you've got the proactive approach. And what does that lead to? Control, safety, and turning a potential catastrophe into something that's actually a manageable emergency. So the big question is, how do we get on that proactive path? How do you make sure your office is ready to handle something like this and turn a high-risk scenario into something your team can actually manage without it all falling apart? Well, the answer from our source is crystal clear: proactive training. And this isn't just about knowing where the fire extinguisher is. It's about empowering your staff, giving them the skills to de-escalate threats, to protect critical data even when they're under immense pressure, and to maintain control when everything feels like it's going sideways. And the path to get there is actually pretty straightforward. First, you've got to identify where you're vulnerable. Then, you implement the training that fills those gaps for everybody on staff. That is how you start to proactively protect your people and your data. And you shift your whole mindset from chasing liability after something bad happens to actually managing your risk before it ever does. And the good news here is that this kind of training is way more accessible than you might think. The source material points out that online courses offer a really fast and convenient way for any business to meet these crucial training requirements. I mean, you can give your team access to this stuff anytime, anywhere, 24/7. And this final thought, well, it's a pretty stark reminder. Preparation isn't some abstract idea. It's the only thing standing between a manageable emergency and a completely preventable nightmare. The choice of which script ends up playing out, that's a choice every single business has the power to make.